Women's
Thanks.
Cave.
Thanks. My word is nervous because I'm here as the male representative for the first time. So I was going to put that in, but I had to give some context.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure on you. No, we're really excited to have you, and I think it just shows symbolistic that it's also very awesome to have a male join and talk about the topic of today. Leah will share all about it. Leah is going to be our host for today's panel. Just to introduce her, she works at Last Minute. She does French B2B partnerships, focusing on incentive programs, gift cards, and travel rewards across Europe. She's very much involved with different associations like the French Forum, who just kicked off last year, with IMA. Paris, she also helped with the organization. And today she'll be our host for, well, and tomorrow as well for the panel, which we did also for Women's Day that, just happened on the 8th of March. Leah, giving the floor to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So thank you all for joining us today for this amazing WIN conversation that we're going to have on advocacy, allyship, leadership. This panel is really supposed to be about one simple idea, which was the theme of the International Women's Day this year, which was Give to Gain. So just to put a little bit of context around this, so the idea that we want to talk about is that when leaders give time, visibility, support, or advocacy to others, especially to people who might not always have a voice, the entire organization, everyone benefits from this. So today we are here to not only share success stories, but also discuss real moments, experiences, and things that have made our panelists as well, and put them where they are today. So before we dive in on the topic, I'd love to just quickly go around and have our panelists introduce themselves to you. So briefly who they are, what they do, and explain why this matters, this topic matters to them personally. So let's give the floor to Eric first.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Leah. I don't know if there's a joke in there about ladies first, with me going first or not, but I won't make it. So no, Eric Thiggs. I know many of you on the call. So excited to be here. I've been 25 years plus in the incentives and loyalty and gift card space. I'm the head of strategy and growth for Neocurrency for the last 2.5 years. And I'm a board member for the IGCC, the Incentive Gift Card Coalition, which is part of IMA US. So very excited to be here and to participate.
Thank you, Eric. Hollis.
Yes, hi there, Hollis Thornton. I head up the distribution partnerships and sales team at Totus Gift Card Management, and we help retailers and restaurants both issue and look for distribution for their gift card programs in the US and Canada. I took a little hiatus from WIN. I'm so excited to be back. Simply, it was just due to time and changing roles at Totus. And I also have a lot of other volunteer work. So like Eric, I'm involved with the IMA. I sit on the executive committee for the IMA. Still try to keep my foot in the door with IGCC, past president there, but still try to volunteer where I can. And this topic is so important to me because I really believe in giving back. I've been through a lot of my life personally, and the one thing that's been constant for about the past 24 years has been the incentive and gift card space. And so I just really believe in giving back, and I get so much, I gain so much from that. And so I look forward to kind of diving into that a bit further and maybe giving you guys some suggestions as well.
Thank you, Hollis. Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia Sisova. I am head of partnerships at Yesti. I've been with Yesti for the last 3 years, and we offer incentive solution for market research companies, but also working on employee reward programs and customer loyalty programs. I've been in this industry since 2008, when I started working at a company called Ovation Incentives in London. And yeah, I have to say I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have leaders who advocated for me both internally and externally. And yeah, I believe we all have a role to play in creating those opportunities for others. So looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, Julia. And Cindy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today and for joining us. I'm Cindy Milkey. I'm the Director of Global Sourcing at Blackhawk Network. So my team leads the global digital gift card sourcing and physical for Blackhawk's gift card solutions. And like others, Eric, Hollis, and so many of you, I'm involved with the IMA. Fun fact, I was the first woman president back in 2005. So this is going to tell you how long I've been in the space. And part of that was made possible by men and women who believed in me. So the association director at that time, some of you, Eric knew her, Hollis knew her. Strong woman who ran the association and advocated for other women. So great to have a role model like her, and men who supported me as well. So just excited to be here and talk with you more about ways that we can uphold and lift each other up and support each other in the world of business in this industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. So thank you for the intro. So I think to just dive in the topic, one of the first things that we wanted to discuss was, and that is one of the first things that comes to mind, is inclusion versus exclusion, whether it's in the workplace or in your personal life, in your everyday life. I think what would be interesting is to understand if you've actually seen women genuinely included or not, especially in leadership or decision making. Again, whether it's around your careers or your everyday life. And on the flip side, where have you seen real exclusions specifically, and what did it look like in practice? Julia, you're the first on my screen.
Yeah, sure. Like one of the examples at EST, and that was back in 23. I joined in May, and in June, our founder, and he said, well, I think I'm ready for a CEO to join the team. I was a bit uncertain. I was okay, just 1 month in the company, and I can see changes are coming, but those were great changes. We had a female CEO joining the team, and the impact was incredible and so quick. Like she's put together a leadership team, a very well balanced with male and female leaders. For me personally, I felt supported. I felt more involved in those decisions. And as a result, we as a company definitely became more productive. We were more aligned. So yeah, absolutely. It's a great example.
Hollis.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we all met, we got together, I'd shared, I've only had male bosses except for just a few short months early in my career, my early 20s. And so this idea of female leadership in my own career, I guess, was new. However, my mom and my aunt owned a business. So I grew up watching two women run a business, right? And being part of that every day, and just the strength and the leadership it took for them to run a successful business that paid two households' bills. But in terms of like intentional or unintentional, I've been in a lot of different situations where I think there's definitely been unintentional exclusion. I think when, I'm not a sports-minded person, unless one of my kids is playing the sport, not really terribly interested in it. So I think, there are definite instances where groups, male and female, right, can get together and talk about certain topics where others in the room might feel excluded. I shared with the group earlier too, like just, even thinking about here in the US and, how much business is done on a golf course. I mean, even Blackhawk Network, right? One of the days at their private, partner event is a day of golf. And a lot of networking and partnerships and decisions are made on the golf course, right? That I would never have the opportunity, and others wouldn't have the opportunity to be exposed to unless you play golf. So I think there's, many, many instances of, things like that can take place where, you might feel excluded. In terms of inclusion, probably hang that over to Eric. I think you had a really great example, but I think, just paying attention to others around you. I know I have worked with other female leaders that maybe aren't as direct in terms of their delivery as I have been. And so making sure that they have a voice, if you hear people talking over them, maybe trying to help give them an opening to share their thoughts. I've definitely seen that happen. I've seen that be successful in, helping other female leaders have kind of a more of a voice in the boardroom, if you will, on a call with other leaders. But Eric, I think you had a really great example of inclusion.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, if it echoes for me, I saw someone had a comment. If one of us is speaking, feel free to flag if there's an echo for one of us. We can always change our settings. But it's strange. It was like the reverse for me, Hollis. My first 8 years of my career, I only had female leaders, a boss, a manager that I directly reported to. And that's a very shaping thing for you. Get out of school, out of college, and then you start your job. And for 8 years, like literally all the way up into my early 30s, I only had female leaders that I reported to. When I became a manager, there's a certain point in your career where you start to get leadership opportunities yourself. My boss gave my first direct report was also a female. So I had females above, a female below, and then I got married, and then I had 2 daughters. So I've been surrounded by strong, powerful, independent women literally since I graduated from college. And in fact, I was just going to pay a little homage to them, because my first boss was Patricia Jones White, a woman of color, African-American woman that I reported to for 2 years. And I learned so much from her. Then it was Stephanie Hansen, Gwen Bauer, Kirsten Ferguson, and Danette Kittleson. I really think I've been fortunate from the male perspective, having a lot of strong females around, and to the point where just the little business lessons in life, whether it's male or female, that you learn from people as mentors. I had a dotted line reporting to a woman named Julie Krause, who wasn't listed as a direct manager, but I remember walking into her office one day, and I'm like a 27-year-old assistant account executive at Carlson Marketing Group. And I said, hey, I need to do XYZ and we need to talk to somebody. And I said, I'll set up a meeting for that. And she goes, no, you're not. And she picked up the phone and handed me the phone. And she goes, you're going to call that person right now. She goes, no better time than the present. And it's like little things like that when you're just a young, impressionable person. And here you have this woman saying, do it, just do it right now. And I've taken that into my career forever. Like, why? There's no reason to wait. If you want to talk to somebody, I've taken this lesson from Julie, just pick up the phone, text, email somebody, and get the answers that you need. But the inclusion for me has been being surrounded by strong females for the vast part of my career, which then and we'll get into it in a little bit, like, what does that mean for advocacy for me as a manager, as I grew in my leadership positions, and, helping evolve and work with, younger women in their careers. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah. And by the way, Hollis, whenever I go to those Blackhawk events, I pick the spa track because I'm a male that does not play golf or do sports. I play guitar and do theater. So for me, it's like, I'll do the spa day all day. And I ended up talking with more women in those settings, as we're crossing in and out of the spa treatment. So, yeah.
I didn't mean to pick on Blackhawk golf in general. I didn't.
Yeah. Oh, no, of course. Yeah.
Just the fact that I encouraged all my kids, including my daughter, to learn how to play,
Yes, right.
To have a leg up. Yeah.
And
well, do you guys think it's interesting? Can I just ask a question? Is that a sign of inclusion? And we'll use Blackhawk as the example, but any partner that has 2 tracks for, you do golf or spa. I mean, it seems like, again, and this is not about stereotypes, but the interest of the people, and you're allowing not just a golf day, because if it was just golf, I think that would be very exclusionary. It seems mindful, and maybe that's coming from Talbot, female leader at a large company versus others that might only offer one.
Only offer the golf. Yeah, true.
Yeah. I think there is a mindfulness about being inclusive there. Eric,
Yeah.
to your point. Yeah.
But Cindy, I was actually, so apparently we're gonna stay on the example of Blackhawk because I think it's a good example. Cindy, I was just about to ask you, because so you've been working with previously, before Tango was bought by Blackhawk, you were working with a lot of male in the leadership team. And my question is just around what Hollis and Julia and Eric were saying. Did you notice a difference in the inclusion versus exclusion, etc., while moving to Blackhawk with a female CEO?
Interesting. I haven't thought about that in particular. Interestingly, I am the opposite of Eric. I have worked predominantly for male leaders throughout my career there have been a few great women along the way as well, but they've predominantly been male. And all of them have, I think, in their own way, tried to be very supportive of me and others around them. And when I say in their own way, I think there sometimes are unintentional things that happen. It's just a cultural thing, right? And so we think about, I've been in the workforce, 30 years plus now, right? So I've seen a lot of change. And an example of that would be, I'm digressing slightly, Leah, but an example of that would be my first male leader. I had explained to him that my path was that I wanted to learn how to lead others and supervise a team. And I had no experience, so I was asking for advice, and he was very supportive of that and would say, I got you. It was a little different than that back in the, late 80s, but the essence of it was, I got you. It would be probably somewhat inappropriate now, but he didn't mean it in any other way. And again, that's an unintentional thing about, I got you, I'll help you. And so for the entirety of my career at my first employer, he would walk by my office wherever I was, and I moved through 3 or 4 roles at that company, and he would say, I got you, meaning love what you're doing, and he was always so supportive. But that's just an example. I digress to share but I'm very fond of that because it was the first experience I had out of college of someone who in the workforce had power and who supported my career path. So I really appreciate and value that. At the dichotomy of the two companies, they're very different. CEO-led, female, male-led Tango, but both excellent leaders and different, right? Tango was a very small company of actively engaged leaders. A large number of leadership were women on the Tango side. Same at Blackhawk. I do see the same. So my current leader is male, but his leader is female, and she's very empowering, and I enjoy working for both of them. So it's different companies, Leah, and I think that's what makes the answer difficult, because completely different companies, right? Small, nimble Tango, large, global Blackhawk, very, very different. But I do see similarities in support. I do see a lot of people at Blackhawk who, male or female, want to get things done, and so that's exciting too. So I don't know that I've seen a lot of difference, because I am now not part of the senior leadership team where I was at Tango. I had a different view of the world as a senior leader at Tango. I am now in a different bucket at a bigger company, right? So I'm no longer part of that higher senior level leadership, but it is female led, and you can feel that trickling through the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, makes sense. I felt like my question was gonna be a bit hard to answer. But so I think to transition to, I think, what Eric as well was saying about advocacy, this word came up right now in the call, and also several times when we were in our prep call. So the point is, inclusion often happens when someone chooses to advocate for someone else. So I'd love to talk about that. I think going back to Eric, I think you had a good example to share about this and how support and visibility
Yeah.
could be great.
Yeah, I'll say one of the practices that I started in my mid-career, kind of going back to that early career, having 8 years of reporting to female management. And then when I was in management myself, and particularly like when I was at NGC at National Gift Card for those 8 years, we and I took a big stance on promoting from within, and in particular, recruiting talented women that were on our teams. Cindy, kind of like to your point, someone that had approached me at some point said, I would like to move beyond this position that I'm in, someone that was in customer service, or maybe they were back in the gift card fulfillment areas. And then through, kind of training and management, just kind of mentorship, allowing advancement within our own organization from our internal talent, in particular with women. And so, our head of account service, Jessica, literally came up through the ranks. Our head of partnerships, Ashley, came up through the ranks. Our head of customer service, Nicole, came up through the ranks. And then, from that advocacy, as a leader saying, oh, if I get to pick the team, who's my dream team? And to balance that out, we had a lot of sales folks that were men. We also had women, but to allow those folks in customer service, partnerships, and account service in particular, because they needed teams underneath them, but to have female leaders, not just as an individual direct report, but someone that was going to be managing other people. That was really, really important to me. And then to obviously have that happen from within, because it just helped foster the culture and the loyalty from what NGC was doing at that time. And then on the sales side, so there's two kind of fronts to this. On the sales side, the idea of team selling, and actually I spoke about this at the win session at the GCVA, not this year, but last year. I raised my hand and made a comment. But we made teams of a man and a woman to close large deals. And it wasn't just a single guy that was going to go out and sell, or just a single woman. But when we found that when we had mixed gender sales teams, we closed so much more business. And I didn't even realize it, but there's a Harvard study out there, and it's a little old. It's from 2017, but they did field research that found there is a significant increase in closing and winning business and profitability and revenue generation when companies utilize mixed gender sales teams together to close business, because you've got two different perspectives from two different gender, backgrounds. And the relatability to connect with the client and to then again win that business just dramatically increases. So I implemented that, and then I even had a sales I called it my face team, and it wasn't because they were pretty, but it was because they were smart, and it was a mixed group of men and women that we would send down the road. If there was a big client, it wasn't just me going in or me and another C-suite person. It was me with Jessica or Ashley or Nicole, along with our head of ops, who happened to be a man. But we would do a mixed gender team, and we were winning business left and right because it showed this balanced culture. And we just presented so damn well when we were it was like a family, and you got men and women together, and it was just beautiful. So, and by the way, here's the other last thing I'll say for advocacy. I fired a client once because whenever this client would call in and talk to our customer service team at NGC, if they got someone on the phone that was male, they were fine. But whenever they got a female, especially in the customer service department, they were just so rude, to the point where some of our customer service team members were crying on a regular basis when this client would call in. And he would never email. He would just always call. He's very short. And I called him up after multiple warnings on this, and we just stopped doing business with him, because I think there's a protection of when someone is just not understanding. You try to get people to open their minds, or to, hey, you're being rude, and you try to be rational, but when they just won't change, at some point you say, we don't need to deal with you, and I don't want your money if that's how you're going to treat our staff. And so I did do that.
Something similar. Yeah, where we had to call a client and say, you absolutely cannot talk to our people that way, or we will not do business with you. Yeah,
100%.
Not acceptable. One thing I just want to call out, as Eric was talking, that I just made note of, there's nothing specific kind of in our agenda about this, but something I learned early on, actually in college. I took a communications class. It's just the communication styles between men and women. And so I'm watching so many of us shake our head as Eric is talking, and, right, yeah, we're agreeing with him. And most men don't do that. And again, I'm old, so this was a lot of years ago. But it is really interesting too when you are in a exec team meeting or any sort of meeting where it's mixed gender. And I think as females, we really have to be mindful of how we're reacting in a meeting. And again, it could be different culturally too, right? But doing this in a meeting because you're listening, that means I'm listening and I'm hearing you, not I'm agreeing with your idea, can be an issue. So just something, that I have found interesting to study is our body language and communication styles across the genders, because I think that sometimes as females we just need to be more aware of it.
This is such a good point, Holly. So I actually thought about something on this topic around how we communicate. So I've had a couple of examples, and that's been mainly with male leaders, where they would put me in a situation where they would say things like, hey, I'm not feeling well, or could you step in and do something? For example, attend a meeting, prepare for a meeting. Almost like making me feel, I was saying something like, oh, I've got something else more important, another meeting I have to attend, making me feel, okay, this is something maybe not, that make me feel smaller. Whereas from female leaders, I had something different, whereas was more, I trust you'll do well. I'm really confident that you can do it on your own. So it really is, how we are communicating. We believe in that person, but do we put it as, can you step
Bias
in a minute?
is there, and the way it's worded, the same ask is worded to you. Yeah, it's interesting.
It is
And
interesting.
on the topic of advocacy, what Eric, you were talking about, I've had some great experience with external advocacy. And that was so powerful. That helped me in my growth better than I would say anything else. But those, when you meet someone and you've had a productive meeting, and then you send a note to the manager. So I had this, I've met someone, a really good meeting. That person after the meeting sent a note to my manager saying how good the meeting was. And that was an absolute boost for my confidence, for how I was seen in the company. So I would say, if you can do that for anyone really that you meet, do that. It's really, it's a great thing to do.
Great example.
And I think this is where we were talking also about mentorship. So I think it's very linked. And I know, Julia, I'm not sure you've been part of the mentorship as a mentee or a mentor, but I know that Cindy and Hollis both were part of the mentorship program of WIN and probably other mentorship programs in their companies. But I think that this is one of the topics that is worth mentioning. For example, just for some additional context, Hollis was actually my mentor 2 years ago when I participated in the WIN mentorship program, and I cannot not recommend it, to be honest. I know this is not the purpose of the call, but for anyone here who feels like they would benefit from meeting other people that they maybe wouldn't have met in their current work setting or in their time zones, I think it's great. So I was based in Spain, Hollis was in the US, and we still managed to talk every month quickly about things that I was experiencing, and her giving me advice on how to tackle communication topics or work-life balance, etc. And I think this was really, really helpful and really powerful in helping me in my decisions in my career. So,
Great.
Cindy, I know you've been part of it. You took a break and you're back in as a mentor. And I know you had some great examples as well on this.
I do. I love this program. Probably one of the first I've participated in that's got formal structure to it, which I love. Both, I've done it twice in a row and I'm back this year. I always say, I think I get as much out of it as my mentee. At least I hope they get as much out of it as I do, because we learn from each other. And in fact, one of my mentees, my first thought was she could be a mentor. But I did realize this as she and I were talking about this morning. At any given time in our career trajectory, I can still be a mentee because I'm working on something that I need help with and I need guidance and want advice. But I can also be a mentor because I have experience and something that I can give to others. So it is, I think, true. We are both always a mentor and a mentee. But she needed some guidance on some things, and she was wonderful to meet. And then all of a sudden, I had a role to fill. And knowing her made me realize what her strengths and her ambitions were. And she applied for the position that we had open and went through the full formal process with everyone, but became now a member of my team. So a great way, I think, for us to connect with others that can benefit our business. And always, for me, a way that I learned from my mentees all the time, too. So it's a great experience.
Eric, you
Can I share a
yeah,
quick, can I share
you
a quick
and
example?
yes,
Yeah,
go ahead.
and of course I'm not a WIN mentor, but here's what I would love to encourage. If any of you do work with men in a mentor-mentee relationship, and I've had men and female mentees with me as a mentor, and I've been very grateful for people who have asked me. I don't go around saying, "Can I be your mentor?" Because that's very, I don't want to presume anything. But like Cindy, I have learned so much, and I think the one thing that stuck out, there was one of my women mentees who had formally asked at one point, like, "Hey, I would love more guidance from you than just as a boss. Can you help develop my career?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And there was a sales pitch going back to the male-female meetings that we would do. And as a young executive, there was at some point I took over the meeting and I didn't even realize that I was doing it. I can be a talkative person and did not read the room. And I'm so glad that she felt safe enough with me after that meeting. She called me out on it and said, "Eric, that was my meeting. I set that up. I started it, but at some point right in the middle, you inputted something on a slide in the conversation and then just continued it." And if it wasn't for her telling me that, I think I would have been oblivious to it, because in my mind it was, oh, she set the meeting up. She started the meeting. I didn't even realize that. And that unawareness for me was probably one of my biggest growth moments as a leader and in working with women, especially because it was almost as if I had been mansplaining or like, "Oh, you're not good enough to do this." And I wasn't intending that at all. And thank God she said something, because it was like something went off my brain, like, wait a minute, I need to listen more. And when it's my, team members meeting, I'm going to hang back until it's time for me to maybe add a comment, but I'm never going to take over a meeting again. So if you are working with men and it seems like you're going to bite your tongue, please don't. Like, let them know they're being assholes. So, and I'm saying that for real. Like, I'm so
Great
glad
take.
someone told me that.
Yes.
But sometimes I'll start, I report in to a male now, and I don't need him to fix it. Sometimes I just need him to listen and to share what path I'm going to do. I don't need you to go call that CEO. I can call the CEO. Thank you. But, and I'm not saying obviously in that tone, but to Eric's point, I think, finding your voice to be able to say, "Listen, I want to share this with you. I appreciate your input, but I would like to try to handle this on my own and get a resolution on my own before you step in. Will you allow me to do that?" There's certainly a way to present that, right, to a male peer or to your boss. But yeah, I don't want them stepping in until at least I've had a chance to fix it. But sometimes you have to explain that, and to somebody. And then, also Eric mentioned that, he's had a couple people ask him. I asked about a year ago somebody that's pretty prominent in the incentives industry if he'd be my mentor. And he agreed. He was very humble about it. And, he gives me an hour a month, every other month, and I'm able to just get his objective opinions on things. And so I really highly recommend, if you're not part of WIN, or if you don't have time to do, even just finding somebody in your life that you can just run things by, right? That's kind of outside even your own organization. I think that is just so critical. Yeah.
Yeah. I have someone, I think I mentioned this to our panel when we were talking initially, that within my own organization, I have someone that I know I can call and bounce something off of without judgment, that person will actually say, do you want my advice or you just want me to listen, right? I respect that. And if I want advice, he will give honest advice. And that can be hard sometimes. You do need someone who I think at times will challenge your way of thinking. And whether that is a male or a female, it doesn't matter. What matters is it's someone who is willing to give you another way to think about something or another way to see something, because that helps you grow. And sometimes I'll think, hadn't thought about that. It's a good perspective. So that is invaluable in our growth personally, I think. To have anyone in the organization that will be honest, that will listen when you want them to listen, that will give good advice when you want good advice. Can be hard to find, but they're there.
A lot of what we've discussed so far actually happens through individual leadership. I think most of the examples that we've just shared since the beginning. And I think the next important thing would be to just zoom out a little bit for a while and discuss what we are seeing is improving and what has really changed over the past few years. And what do you think actually made a difference? If there is anything you've noticed that made the whole workplace better or the whole like everyday life better.
Can I have a thought right away, and I hate to admit that COVID, as awful as it was, I feel like with the work-life balance aftermath of that, and I know some companies are reversing things and saying, oh, you got to come in X number of days. So outside of some of those, policy changes with certain companies, the work-life balance for most families and workers, men and women, but particularly women, in my view, or at least experiences, has gotten better. And I can point to one thing, which was before COVID, going back to NGC, we didn't have like a mother's room, like for nursing or for, when after maternity leave and people come back and they need to pump and things like that. I didn't realize this. And this, again, men aren't thinking of these things sometimes, and shame on us and shame on me for this. Again, younger executive days, you go through these experiences and you're a lot wiser. But I remember someone coming in and saying, oh, one of our employees was in the bathroom, pumping over her lunch break. And I'm like, what, in the bathroom? Like, oh my God. So you hear things like that, you start to make changes. But once we had COVID and there was more just understanding of this work-life balance of working from home, squeezing in family. You kind of stretch the workday on the beginning or end to get things done, but there's a little bit more wiggle room in the middle. And I know my management style changed after that. The expectation that it's 9 to 5 kind of went out the door. And I just saw a lot more happy, let's see, employee satisfaction, and particularly for moms. So that was maybe one thing I'll throw out there to start this.
Can I say something about dads?
Please,
I have men and women on my team. But I think being 30 plus years in the workforce, I saw that different attitude about working mothers in the beginning that has changed. And I think you're right, Eric. COVID came along and gave workers of all sexes flexibility. And the thing that I have seen is men now being as active of a parent as a woman. And so I have a male who had 2 twin boys recently. I have a male who had his first son, and both of them are coming in, as I recall, tired, sleepless, worried, doctor appointments. I see men sharing an active role. Hey, I'll be out a few hours in the morning while I accompany my wife to the doctor with our new baby or our twins, right? And so men are more open, I think, to sharing that. I support it for a woman or a man. It doesn't matter. You're a parent and you have an obligation and a commitment outside of work. And I want to be flexible for everyone about that. So I have seen that in this generation differently than I saw it in generations previous to this. And it's a nice thing to see that men aren't afraid to say, I will be out today for a doctor appointment for my child, where I don't think 30 years ago that was as common.
That's a great point about the generational shift.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I've noticed, and I initially wasn't sure if it's like a cultural difference, because yeah, working now for a Dutch company, you hear a lot, yeah, people are more direct, but it feels like it is a shift, but that it's absolutely fine to say, for example, you didn't have a good night's sleep because maybe you were up with a baby, and everyone is just absolutely fine. No one, like before, you would probably try to come up with excuses, or I see a big change there. And the other one, I think, probably more related at which stage the company is, the growth. But at EST, what I've seen when I joined, that would be a male founder CEO with a male CTO discussing one-on-one, for example, the road map and what we're going to develop next. That's changed as the company has grown. So we have broader team where we collectively take those decisions. There's definitely a different dynamic in the room. Women are involved in shaping the direction, those discussions. So yeah, more probably on like the stage where the company is, but absolutely a shift in our company in the last 2-3 years.
Great.
The other thing I'd just like to add to that whole flexibility piece is it just opens up as well the pool of people that you can access. Of course, now that you can have the remote workers, as an employer, the people that you can tap into in terms of the right resource for the right role is much broader. And then those people appreciate having those opportunities in companies that they may not have had that opportunity to work in as well. So I think that in itself, that flexibility, then also broadens that inclusivity, because you can suddenly tap into people that were living out miles away in the countryside, but can actually perform the job, perfectly well as long as they're willing to travel occasionally to clients or whatever it is. So again, you're tapping into a different pool. It's not just the people who are city dwellers living near to an office that may be a fairly consistent type of person. Suddenly you can tap into different resources. That's the other thing I wanted to add into that ability to be inclusive, variable, flexible around your whole workforce, which I think is a real positive as well.
Yeah, we had one of my companies had gone through a sale and then an acquisition by a private equity. And just by the nature of the executives that were left from that acquisition kind of M&A event, and then who the PE folks brought in, because they brought in some of their own team, it ended up with an all-male kind of leadership C-suite. And it was only because it was cobbled together. It wasn't like, oh, this is an old boys club from a founder that built up a bunch of his buddies. It was sort of like we suddenly found ourselves together. And because of that, we were very sensitive to it. I think from some of the outside, people might, well, look at those guys, they're running the company. We ended up doing our best to create a female leadership layer that included leaders on IT, compliance, HR, that, essentially we would have leadership meetings instead of like a C-suite meeting. So the partners would bring in additional, again, thinking and thought that were from women in the organization. And that very much helped just expand, again, this dialogue between men and women and not being exclusionary, because we found ourselves an all-male C-suite, but we really were like, oh, we need to be sensitive to that, and building another kind of leadership level, that we're kind of associated with our circle.
Back to the remote workforce. So I've actually been remote I always have to think my oldest child's 22. So like 23, as long as I've been in the industry, basically 23, 24 years. So I've been very fortunate. I was, single mom, raised my 3 kids working from home and have had that flexibility. What's been interesting to me is I work for a very small org now, and we're remote. We're all over the place. We have, a couple little home bases, but for the most part, we're all over the place. But it's watching the people that were used to going into an office every day kind of struggle with this concept. And like, I can see them wrestling with, well, we need to have a home base and everybody needs to be in that office. And our next new hire needs to be in this particular city so we can have them, come to an office. And the rest of us are saying, why? Because like what, Christine shared, the resources available to us around the world are incredible. But one of my takeaways actually was going to be, so I'm getting ahead of myself, I guess, but I just think one of the things that is so critical for the leadership team, or if you're a team leader or part of a team, is if you are remote, is just finding ways to connect. If you can't, like, we're a startup. So the last couple of years, we haven't, frankly, we can't afford to all have a company-wide meeting in a city, right? We're keeping the lights on here. We're building something great, luckily that's changing a bit, but you're just finding some fun ways to connect, finding somebody that can be an advocate for this remote workforce, and, whether it be a faux happy hour or a coffee hour or whatever it might be, just to find those human connections, beyond this video screen, I think it's just so critical for us as remote workers.
Just to transition to, so we're entering the last the last 10 minutes almost. Just quickly before we go on the key takeaways, there was one thing that came up in our prep call, which was around regrets. And I know that, Eric, there is an example that I think you can share, which was around the time where you actually had some regrets about not acting or acting a certain way.
Yeah. And actually I kind of talked about that merger and acquisition event that had happened at my old company. One of the things that sometimes outside of your control, when the other partners or the majority of partners from a PE company say, hey, we're going to shake things up and we're going to let some people go. So one of the folks that was let go, decided by kind of the larger board. And again, my regret is I wish I would have spoken up more loudly for this person, was our very first employee. She was a female, and she was in our tech team. Now, where the company was going at the time, her skills weren't matching where we needed to go from a security and compliance standpoint. I regret that instead of having her leave the company, we didn't find a repurposed position, or I didn't advocate more loudly to say, she was our first employee. Like, there's a part of the heart and soul of this company that sits with her. Can we find something else for her to do? That decision, I brought it up once. I really didn't fight for it, because after the rest of the team was like, no, we need to make this decision, and she's gone. I've truly regret not saying. Sometimes there are people, and in this case, it was a female, and I wanted to stand up and, in hindsight, shout that from the rooftops. Like, before we do this, we got to talk to her and do something different. So that is one of my big regrets. I think if males, we're speaking here as a collection of, for WIN, but whenever I talk to male leaders, I'm like, stand up for those that don't have a voice. And if you think there's something there, do everything in your damn power to, reverse the course of action if you can. I feel like I've been sharing a lot of regrets. I spoke up and overrode an employee on that presentation. Like, I have no ego when it comes to saying I have learned a lot from the women in my life. And do I have regrets?
I do that, Eric. I mean, I've done that,
Right.
like when you have a strong voice. I mean, one of the things I had to learn, like really early in my career, again, I think coming from a mom, ran a roofing business of all things too, right? A male-oriented business that she ran. We're just very direct people. And so I had the opportunity to become lead a team at a very young age. And I really had to learn how to soften my messages and how not to talk over. And I still am guilty of it, right? It's you grow up and you learn one way, you're socialized one way. And I've had something I constantly am working on. And actually at TOTUS, there's a gentleman, and he and I kind of have like a code word for each other, because he has a tendency to do that too. So just having those advocates to help kind of point out, like, that about yourself. Mm-hmm. And I don't intend to do that. I don't mean to do that, right? I certainly want to give somebody else their due time and respect. Come by it naturally, but it's just something that early on I felt like I really had to kind of temper myself and learn how to deliver a message maybe a little softer to an employee, and the benefit you get back from that is tenfold. Yes. You get so much more out of them and out of the relationship, and it's just a win-win for everybody. So I'm just trying to say you're not the only one, Eric.
No, I appreciate that.
I have the same, Hollis. I can be direct. I can be really wanting to have a conversation, and other people are quieter and more reluctant to share. It doesn't mean they aren't stronger or have some really great ideas. And sometimes I want to hear, but I think I have a tendency to need to, and I've been called out for this, a growth moment for me, right? Be quiet and make sure that I've heard from everyone. And sometimes some people don't feel comfortable in a room of 5, 6, 10 people speaking up. So knowing who those people are, I can call them out privately and say, I didn't hear from you in the meeting. I'd really love to get your thoughts on. And then they're more open to sharing and have some really great ideas. They're just not as comfortable in that environment that we were in. And that doesn't make them any less strong. It's just different. It's not anything less than. Now, could I say you shouldn't be afraid to speak up in that environment? Of course, that's good coaching, but they may never be the type of employee that wants to speak up in that environment, but they have good ideas. And so I've had some coaching feedback that I've been very open to hearing, and I've actually felt bad because to me, it's like, well, why are you afraid to speak up? We shouldn't, like, this just seems normal to me, but to some people, that's terrifying. And they may have great ideas. And so it's just learning to respect the differences in how we communicate and get the best of the team that we have around us. And then
Yeah,
the
and
right
Cindy, I
environment.
also feel like as a leader that's kind of part of our job too, is how can we help strengthen those skills for that person?
Yes.
You know, how can I help them get outside of their comfort zone
Yeah.
so that they can be heard? And not just my direct reports, but others that I see maybe kind of pulling back, or that I know, like you say, have amazing ideas and can contribute.
Yeah.
How can
Yeah.
I help them without being too overbearing and just offering
Yeah.
the advice, but how can I help coach them as well?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if I look at my regrets, resonates a lot with what Eric was saying. But it's been a while ago, but I had a colleague returning from maternity leave, and the baby was sick so often. I couldn't even like imagine how the baby can be sick so often until I had my own kids. But yeah, I wish I stood up for her more, and I felt like there was little opportunities, little support from the company. Back then, no one thought about that. Maybe you could do some work from home. That was not an option. Everyone had to be in the office.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And a regret when I look back.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. I think this is, I mean, this is really powerful to be able to have this conversation as well and not only focus on the positive. It's good to understand what you've been through and kind of in your experience, just understanding what are the things that you would have done differently, especially for, I mean, for example, for me, this is really, really interesting. So I think we're coming close to the end of the conversation. So just briefly, if you can share a few takeaways that you would like everyone in this room and every leader to live with, that would be great. So maybe, I don't know, Julia, if you.
I think if I was going back to the points I mentioned in the beginning, but definitely the external advocacy. Yeah, think about that, how you can implement that definitely works. And of course, the be more mindful about how you communicate what you may think it's empowerment. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Cindy.
Did you say Cindy, Leah?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry,
Sorry.
Cindy.
No problem. Oh gosh, so much to reflect on. I think two things, if I may. One is, as an industry, we're about reward and recognition and incentives, and I think we all work for companies who provide continuing education, especially when that continuing education is around reducing their risk. But I don't see it a lot for things that are more optional or soft, like modeling inclusive skills for leaders. Those are more optional trainings as opposed to required trainings. So I do think about that when I think about how we want to build our culture at our company, and that we need more leaders who are inclusive leaders. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have, right? And so I think about that. And then I just think about the mindfulness I'll leave with all of you is focusing on those who are less visible, which is a common thread that we've all talked about. So focus on those who are less visible. How can we reach out to them and pull them up? Because there's so much value in everyone in our organization.
Alice.
I think if I had to say one word, it would be about connection, because that's really what for me personally, it's making connections in any way I can with people. And I touched on a little bit on that, I think maybe because I've been remote for so long. But just taking the time, I don't care if it's a direct report, if it's a peer, if it's a customer, to just try to find something to connect with somebody on. And if you're not the type of person that remembers names or can remember that Eric has 2 girls, it's okay to make a note for yourself too. If you're not that type of person, remember, but just making that connection, finding something that you can touch back on with somebody. I've just found that it opens doors. And I just think it's in today's world with everything that's going on, that is just, critical to success in business and personal relationships. So I think for me, it would always be about improving your connection. And it happened this morning on my daily affirmations. Words have power, right? We can choose to use them to build people up or tear people down. And I thought that was so apropos for today. That was my reading this morning.
Thank you. And Eric.
I've been taking my notes while we've been doing this call. I have 4 things that I'm going to speak to men in particular, for any men that might be watching this, or for those of you that have male leaders. You're like, you know what Eric Thig said? Well, here's what he said. He said, build co-ed mixed gender sales teams, period. Listen before talking, you jerks, period. Look for ways to advance and train women from within, period. And lastly, and you guys have all touched on this, advocate for those without a voice, period.
I think it needs to be a coffee talk, Eric.
That's what I was about
By
to
the way,
say.
this is
I
you
agree.
guys, this call, I'm literally, and this is going to be my coffee talk for this week.
I like
I love
it.
you all. Thank you for this opportunity, for letting me sit in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being part of the panel. I think we really touched on great topics, and I mean, it's always interesting to have this conversation. And thank you, Eric, for joining us and not being afraid by being an advocate of WIN. I think this is what we're really trying to do now, and we really want to have more people involved, not only women. It's not, I mean, we've been working on this and saying it, but it's not men versus women. It's just making sure that we're able to work all together and give a voice, as Cindy also was saying, give a voice to the people who might not feel like they can or want to speak up. So I think it's great. If there is one thing that I can add in the end, it's just that, I mean, coming from everything we've said, I think it's about really the everyday choices we make to support everyone around us, so all the people we have around. I think this is where we need to focus. And Eric, if you do your coffee chat, I cannot wait to hear it. I cannot wait to watch it.
I'm going to film it
And
today. I'm inspired.
amazing. No, this is gonna be great. And it's gonna be a great follow-up from our call. See, we're gonna touch so many new people and so many more people. So thank you. I think, I don't know, Rachel. I mean, it's already we've been over 1 minute, but I still see a lot of people here. So I don't know if we can just do a round of questions if anyone has questions.
Yeah, I would say if the panelists are all okay to stay. If not, feel free to jump up. I just want to take an official moment to thank all the panelists today, but also Leah for your prep work, your organizing and hosting today. So thank you so much for putting in the work. For those who need to go, please go. Thank you for being here today. Also for panelists who need to go, but maybe we can take 2 more questions.
Looks like no questions.
Then I think the message was clear today, right?
And
Thank you, everybody, again. And as always, we record the sessions for our members. You'll be able to find it in a few days from now. We always do a recap blog as well to all the points discussed today, all the nice takeaways that all the panelists gave at the end. We'll make sure to put it and summarize it together. Thanks all for being here, your input, your honesty, and your openness. And then we hope to see you very soon.
thank you. Thank you,
Everybody.
everyone.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.